welcome to TripPlanner101 Walt Disney World. My name is Ray, and I'm sure glad you joined me today. We're going to start talking about what it takes to plan a trip to Walt Disney World. Those of you that live in the Mountain West probably have plenty of experience getting yourselves down to Disneyland, but planning a trip to Walt Disney World can be a little bit more cumbersome. So I've designed this separate set of videos that are going to go alongside with my normal Rocky Mountain Mouse videos, where I'm going to break down planning a trip to Disney World in 10 steps. And then each video is going to take one of those steps, explode it out. We're going to talk about the details that go into each step, and then hopefully you can follow them as we go along and plan yourself a successful trip down to Florida. I want to put out a disclaimer first that I am not affiliated with Disney or Disney parks in any way. I have no sponsorship by any travel agencies or airlines or anything of the sort. Although during this time I'm going to be giving you my opinions, telling you my experience with certain agencies and with Disney to kind of help you make a more informed decision. But again, I'm not affiliated or sponsored by any of them. So today's video is just going to be an overview. We're going to go through each step and talk about what it is that's coming up so that you know what the list of things is that you have to do to plan your trip. To begin with, I'd like to talk a little bit about why Walt Disney World. Why is there value in going down to Florida versus just taking a short trip down to California and seeing Disneyland? The first difference and the most noticeable at Walt Disney World is the size of Walt Disney World. It sits on 40 square miles of land in Central Florida, and that is roughly the size of the city of San Francisco. So to help you get some perspective on that, within that 40 square miles, there are 4 full theme parks, over 14 resort hotels, 2 water parks. There's an entertainment and shopping district called Disney Springs. There's also 140 plus restaurants on property, and it employs over 65,000 cast members to keep this operation running and keep the magic flowing while you're there. They also have their own transit system down there. It is like its own little city. They have buses and boats and monorails, and you can just get yourself around, and it's all free on property. And you don't need to worry about getting back and forth on this massive piece of land. You can let Disney do the driving, so it's pretty amazing. Another thing that I really like about it is you feel very insulated from the outside world once you get on property. So you drive off of the freeway, and once you enter Disney World, it's a little ways before you actually see anything like a hotel sign or one of the theme parks. Each theme park is, I would say, about 10 to 20 minutes away from each other. That's how far apart they're spread. But it's beautiful. The highways are lined with green trees. It's very well kept, very well maintained. And so you just feel the magic once you're in, and then you forget about everything that's behind you. That's kind of the opposite feeling that you get when you're in California, where you walk out of Disneyland, you leave that magic, and instantly you're in Anaheim and you're in the hustle and bustle of that area. And it can jolt you out of that experience that you're having, which just isn't the case in Walt Disney World. So there's just such a broad appeal. When my family goes down, we travel down from infants all the way up to the elderly. And down there is something. We may not find the same thing we like to do all the time, but there's always something for everybody that's of interest. And it's such a great place to be that I think it's definitely worth your time if you're a Disney Parks fan to get down to Disney World and experience that. In my first Rocky Mountain Mouse video, I made a comment about how Disney World tends to be cheaper than Disneyland, and so I just kind of want to go over some numbers so that I can better explain what I meant. So we're going to do some comparisons. The only one that isn't necessarily apples to apples is I'm going to compare a 3-day park hopper to a 5-day park hopper at Walt Disney World, because in Disneyland you can essentially get everything done in 3 days. There aren't a lot of people that spend more time than that. At Walt Disney World, 5 days is probably what you need to experience well what it has to offer. So we're going to talk 5-day park hopper pass. At Disneyland, that park hopper pass is going to be $98 a day. At Disney World, it's going to be $81 a day. The cheapest on-property hotel at Disneyland is $259 a night, whereas the cheapest on-property hotel at Disney World is $89 per night. I just did a generic meal. It's quick serve, nothing fancy. Cheeseburger, fries, and a drink at Disneyland is $14.28. That same meal would cost you $14.58 at Walt Disney World. Then kids meals $6.99 at Disneyland, is $5.99 at Walt Disney World. So food is kind of a wash until you take into this one consideration that Walt Disney World allows you to bring food, outside food, into their parks. So you can pack a cooler with sandwiches and some beverages and chips. Take that in with you. If you're pushing around a stroller, you can take that around the park and have a picnic with your own food, which that isn't something they allow you to do in Disneyland. So there is a way to cut back on the cost of what tends to be expensive food in the parks. You also have, if you're going to take that in, there's also lockers at the front of the parks that you can leave your coolers in if you so choose. So a couple of options there. So basically, when we break this down for one day with a family of 2 adults and 2 kids eating 2 meals a day that day in the park, at Disneyland, this would run you roughly $693.54, where the calculation for Walt Disney World would be $454.14. So that's kind of why I made the comment that it can be less expensive to spend your time at Walt Disney World when you're talking about value, because you can see there is quite a difference between the price there. The last thing I want to talk about as we're talking about Disney World is that I have spoken to a lot of people that have gone to Disney World, and generally it's an either I love it or I hate it experience. And if I talk to the people that say I hate it, I can now, I've talked to enough of them that I can guess what they did, in my opinion, what they did wrong. One, they've gone during the hottest and most crowded times of the year, which is June through August. They've also only spent a couple of days there. The third thing that they have in common is they're spending time off property doing other things, meaning they're splitting their time when they're down in Orlando and they're going over to Universal Studios, or they're going to SeaWorld or the other attractions that are down in Orlando. And the last one is they generally are always staying off property. Those tend to be the 4 common factors of someone that tells me they didn't enjoy their trip to Disney World. So what I'm hoping to do is help you get away from those so that when you go down there, you do experience it and you do get all of the value and the magic out of it that you can. So I'm going to go over the 10 steps that we're going to cover in detail in future videos. And these are in order, or at least in the order I think they need to be done and addressed. Step number 1 is budget. I think there's a lot of time that people will plan a vacation, but they don't really look at the overall costs, and they end up having to finance more than they wanted to, or put some of the trip on credit cards. And so we're going to talk about how to make Disney World better fit your budget, how to make those decisions that will save you money so that you're having a great experience for the budget that you want. But that's the most important thing, is to understand your budget. Step number 2 is choosing a date, and that goes hand in hand with your budget, because if you can get down there in the slower times of the year, you're going to save yourselves a lot of money at Walt Disney World, and therefore can fit into your budget. Also, in choosing your dates, you've got to weigh out, your jobs, when your kids are off school and all those things. It may be that you need to end up down there during June or July, but you can still do it right so that you can maximize that time that you're down there. So choosing the date is number 2. Number 3 is deciding whether or not to use a travel agency. I have done both, and so I know what the experiences are. I know what the pros and cons are of both sides. And so there are some people that just prefer leave it to a travel agent, let them worry about it, and I'll just get on the plane, and that's fine. We'll talk about that. But there's also those like me who prefer to put the puzzle pieces together themselves. There's a lot of satisfaction in doing that, and it's a lot of fun. And so if you know what you're doing, you can do it right. And so we'll talk about that. And if you choose not to use a travel agent, then the videos will continue to be of more value to you. After you've decided that, number 4 is the vacation package deals that are offered at Walt Disney World. Understanding when they're offered, we'll go over what they are historically and what to expect. They do change from time to time, but you can get room discounts, you can get ticket discounts, you can get the most popular one, which is free dining. So you go down there and you get free dining during your trip. And we'll talk about dining in another video. But basically that means you're not paying for anybody's food while you're on the trip. So we'll talk about the vacation packages and what to expect from them. The wonderful thing about booking with Disney is that you can, let's say you're in July and you plan a trip for December. You can go ahead and book that trip. And then if in September they offer a deal for that same time period you're down there, you call them back up, they'll apply that deal, no problem, to your vacation, and then you'll get the savings. All right, then step number 5 is deciding where to stay. And we're going to split this into 2 videos because we're going to talk about where to stay on property or where to stay off property, because there are 2 different beasts and there are perks that come with staying on property that you're going to want to know about. So we'll talk about that in detail. Then after that, step number 6 is the dining at Walt Disney World. Understanding, I told you there are over 140 restaurants. It's going to be important that you understand what that means when you're making your dining options. Of course, they have all the quick serves, the burgers and the chicken and the hot dogs and all that stuff. They also have other restaurants that you can go to and experience. And that brings in the dining plan. We'll talk about what the dining plans are, what the differences are, how to make advanced reservations. There are restaurants down there, for example, Be Our Guest restaurant in Fantasyland, most popular restaurant in Disney World. And you need to have that booked months and months in advance. So we'll talk about how to make those dining reservations so that you have that planned out. Step number 7 would be booking your airfare, understanding how much it's going to cost roughly to get your family down there. We found that there are certain times, there's windows that you can book in and get the best deals. We'll talk about the tools on how to know when that is, know when to book, and how to save yourselves money on airfare. Then after that, we'll go to step number 8, which is My Disney Experience. Disney World has what they call a Magic Band, and it's a piece of technology where it goes around your wrist and it houses everything that you need. So if you're staying on property, it's your room key, it's your dining plan, it's your it's hooked directly to your hotel room portfolio, so you can charge things to your room and then pay for that when you leave. It's got your fast passes, it's everything. So we're going to talk about that, how to use that technology, how to use the corresponding app with it, because that's going to be a huge part of planning this trip and understanding it. And you'll want to do that sooner than later. Set up your My Disney account. After that, we'll talk about transportation, meaning what happens when I get to Florida, to Orlando. How do I get from point A to point B? Do I rent a car? Do I use what they offer, which is the Magic Express? The great thing about Disney World is if you want to go down and not have to worry about transportation, you can set it up so that you're picked up at the airport, dropped off at your hotel, use all the property transportation to get around, and then when you go home, they will pick you up, take you back to the airport. Done deal. And so you don't have to worry about anything, including your baggage. And that's pretty exciting. So stay tuned for episode number 9. And then the last step, number 10, is what to bring. We'll talk about the things that you should pack and maybe shouldn't pack as you head down to Disney World, because I have been in every season of the year, and I've never been to Disney World where it hasn't rained on me at least once. So there are things that you want to make sure you're prepared with. Otherwise, you may be making a trip to the local Walmart. So those are going to be the 10 basic steps to planning all of this. Like I said, if you follow them along, this is how I found it to be the most successful way to plan. After that, we also have some supplemental videos where we're going to talk about pets, if you can take them, what to do with them, Also accessibilities for disabilities. We've got some great information on that. How to plan a trip with infants and toddlers. What kind of things they have on property to help make that easier. We'll also talk about some of the things that are off property that might be fun if you do want to venture off property. And then we'll have a video that talks about the tricks of the trade, things that we found that have worked for us that will probably work for you too, and that you might want to know. So hopefully this has been a fun overview for you, and it's getting you excited about planning a trip to Walt Disney World. I'm sure excited. My family has one coming up in October, and as we plan, we're doing something a little different this year. I'll talk about this in our staying on property video. And as we do this, it's new, so I'll give you our opinions of how this is working and how it worked, and then that can be an option that you add to your arsenal of things as you're planning your trip. Thanks for joining me today. Please subscribe. Hit that button down below and click subscribe so that you can get all my updates on my YouTube channel. Also visit me on my webpage, www.rmmouse.com, and like my Facebook page on facebook.com/Rocky Mountain Mouse. I'm going to start something a little different today. Anybody that leaves comments below, I will put their names in a hat, and then on the next episode, I will pull the name from the hat, and if I pull your name, I will send you 2 Disney trading pins for you to get your collection started, because pin trading is a fun thing to do in the parks. It is essentially free if you've got pins to trade, and I thought that would be a fun little perk for people who are watching and commenting on my videos. So yeah, make sure you comment below. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. If you don't like my hair, I'll get a haircut, whatever the case may be, and I'll try to respond to as many as I can. But I appreciate you all following this and being a part of this little community. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.